work with them, but we, put up the money for the advertising. We control all the creative, and they basically just book the theaters and get it in and collect the money for us, and then, do the DVD sales and all that. But they don't get any creative control over the project or the marketing message.
Gotcha. I read that, I know you said you weren't a fan of FX when you actually had to do it behind a TV screen, but you also said that you were on film sets where you've watched big budget action movies happening and you had a blast. Did you ever think that maybe your career will go in that direction at some point? Would you like to sort of do a superhero type movie?
I've thought about that a lot. I think part of that is looking at kind of what you have to trade off. I think for me, it's funny. I really never wanted to be in the film business in a certain. I did because I thought I looked at it from a cultural influence standpoint. Again, I look at this as, for me, being more of a cultural influence position than one of just solely being a filmmaker. Now, I went to film school. I've watched thousands upon films. I've watched all the greatest films. I absolutely love films. I watch a film probably every night. I watch a film or a TV series. So, I can talk fluently in just about every genre and everything, and old films, new films, even stuff like Vim Vendors and stuff like that. I mean, I've done, Kurosawa, all the guys. But at the same time, what I'm really here for, what I feel called to be, is more of a cultural influence and being a voice there. And sometimes I do feel like a lone voice in the wind in Hollywood. There are other conservatives and stuff, but a lot of times we're not even connected to each other. So if there was a platform, if it made sense for me on a platform, I would probably go that route. I mean, what I feel I'm more drawn to is telling true life stories. I would love to do I would love to do the Washington movies. On George Washington. I think that's just a fascinating story of him coming up as a boy and what he went through and becoming, General Washington and then President Washington. In that sense, there's the story of Robert Smalls, who was born as a slave and became a ship's mate who eventually stole a boat during the Civil War and ran that through the Confederate blockades, and then became a captain within the Union Navy. And the first black captain on our first black boat with all black crew members. I mean, to me, these are more compelling where it's, truth is stranger than fiction type situation. So these are the stories I'm drawn to, things like Gosnell, and that's why I think of coming out of a documentary background is I think it's just part of that. Too.
Gotcha. One last question. A lot of conservatives have been kind of chuckling about how much firepower Hollywood unleashed for Hillary Clinton and against Donald Trump, and it didn't help. It didn't sway the election, obviously, but there's someone like yourself who is sort of an influencer in a way. Does that give you pause that all these sort of cultural weapons were sort of fired and it didn't work? Do you have to change anything that you do, or is it just your game is just different than the other people's games?
Well, that's a very good point. I've actually thought about that. I think this election to me, though, was different. I think you have a lot of people in this election that were very much hurting. I think, middle America, there are a lot of people in middle America that they're almost in an apocalyptic, if you will, kind of situation with work and jobs and what they're having to do. That for them, Katy Perry could not, sell them no matter what. They just don't have a job. Life is not good for them. They haven't bought a used new car in 10 years. They haven't gone on vacation. They haven't enjoyed what America is supposed to be providing. So to hear some celebrity, lecture them on something. I mean, again, I think it's ironic, like with Leonardo DiCaprio traveling around on a private jet, lecturing us all on global warming. I'm very concerned about the environment. I've actively been concerned about it, doing beach cleanups and stuff of that nature. I'm very concerned about the plastic in the oceans. I'm an avid spear fisherman and scuba diver. So these things impact me on a certain way, but to be lectured by somebody who's traveling around on a G5, it's a little, I think people see the irony and the hypocrisy of it. So I think this election was a little bit different that way. I do think they will pay attention to cultural stars when it matters. I mean, I think James Woods has gotten a lot of attention in a positive way. John Boyd, and again, I think that there's a disengagement with the millennials too on this. I think they're more disengaged and from a lot of these popular stars than people think they are. But I think older Americans, I'd kind of even go to Gen X and a little bit older, if somebody like John Boyd speaks, they'll listen to it because they really appreciate John and where he's been, and particularly the position he was in before. John's a Vietnam guy and has kind of come around and been very pro-America, pro-Israel. And so when I think you have that versus, say, the Joss Whedon video that was done with everybody in there from the Marvel movies, I think that's going to hurt. I mean, I had a friend yesterday, asked the question earlier. I mean, I had lunch with another Hollywood executive. He says, I absolutely love Jennifer Lawrence. I've seen every single Jennifer Lawrence movie there is, like 2 or 3 times. He goes, but after the comment she made, I will never see another one. So I just wonder,
I hear that a lot as well, by the way.
Yeah, the middle American, family, if they're engaged in this, are they going to be like, yeah, we really want to go support this person or go see these movies? I think they're going to opt out. I mean, to a certain degree, if they can. Yeah. So I think it's going to be a problematic situation going forward for Hollywood unless they kind of turn this around.
Yeah, well, I hope they do. As a content consumer, I certainly hope that things get better. But John, thank you so much. Before I let you go, we talked about the Gosnell movie. Any other projects or any places where we can find you, either online or you can kind of let our listeners know?
Gosh, I wish I'm so bad at personal promotion. Everybody tells me that I'm like the most underrated performer here in these types of things. Unfortunately, I don't. I have a documentary we'll have coming out next year that I'd love to come back when we have it done and talk to you about. That's kind of under wraps right now, but I think it's one of the most important relevant events and people going forward.
That's a good tease.
Yeah. And then I have another movie, hopefully that's going into production in January that we can come back and talk about once it goes here. But it'll be a very big one, and I think it's one of those, again, for me, I'm always working on kind of the true life stories, and this will be the most compelling true life stories, I think, that